Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Tunnel Vision, a show brought to you by USCFootball.com. I'm your host, Keely, Eure, joined by Ryan Abraham and Shotgun Spratling. We got a good show for you guys today. USC, in the meantime, since our last episode, has picked up 3 new commits. We'll talk about them and what USC is getting with them. We're also going to talk about the NCAA. They're in the news again for 2 separate reasons. So we'll talk about that. We'll also talk about USC's player-run practices. USC has been doing their off-season conditioning workouts and as well as running their own practices, so we'll talk about that. Shotgun was there yesterday, so we'll get the full update from him. And of course, we'll be taking your comments, questions, and concerns. You can get a hold of us many ways. First off, you can call us 512-4TUNNEL. Our intern Micah is on the phone screening your calls. You can tweet at us, #TunnelVision, put your question, your comment, and I will read it and put it on the air. And then whatever platform you're watching us on, Facebook Live, YouTube, or Periscope, you can comment. Shotgun and I will see your comments, and we will answer them. So a full show for you guys today. Guys, what do you want to start with first? We have a lot of topics to talk about.
There's a lot kind of going on. It's amazing. You were talking, I was listening, I'll give you guys a plug, the Family Feud podcast you can listen to. We've actually put up 2 podcasts today already, the Peristyle podcast, because we had our live show last night with Jake Olson and John Baxter and Matt Barkley. You can check that out, peristylepodcast.com or wherever. Just search for that on wherever you listen to your podcast. So that went up this morning. Then Keely, Dan Weber and I, we did a podcast a little bit later in the day, and that's already up too. We'll probably put this up as a podcast at some point. But there's been a lot of stuff going on, and we got to see you last night because you were over at USC for the player run practice. Then you come over to the live event over at the lab, and when you guys were talking during your Family Feud podcast, which will probably go up Thursday or something, to think is like, yeah, we can talk to the players in July, and I was like, that's like 2 months away, right? No, wait. Oh my God, that's only a few days away. Carol Folt, the USC president, she's going to be hired, or she's starting. She's already hired. She'll be starting in like 5 days or something like that. Crazy. I can't believe it's almost July.
Right? It's USC had PRPs for a whole month. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, normally we're there like taking pictures, shooting video, and we can't do that now. So it's more just like Shotgun looking over a wall and kind of spying on them a little bit. But since they don't allow that, but yeah, it's just like July kind of snuck up on us.
Yeah, June has gone by pretty quickly, but College World Series ends today. That means it's time to move to football season.
Wow.
It's really, that doesn't have any impact
yes,
whatsoever.
It does. That's the end of baseball season.
He has it
that
actually
means
on
it's
his screen right now.
We're watching
wow,
it, obviously.
Shotgun, focus.
Vanderbilt's up 6-1 in the bottom of the 5th, guys.
Yeah.
In case anyone's wondering.
That's just one of his flaws. He likes college baseball. That's fine, you know.
Just one of the flaws.
Well, I don't know. Do you want to talk? So since the last show we did, we're not going to have a show next week. We have a very special guest lined up 2 weeks from now, so we'll do
July
that. But
10th.
There's a bunch of vacations and stuff going on. I'm going to be flying to Dallas for the opening, so I will be gone next week. So I won't be able to do a show. And Shotgun's you're going to be gone too, right, or something?
Could be.
Yeah. So we're not going to do a show next week, but 2 weeks from now, July 10th, should be a very special guest. So that should be cool. But since we did the show last week, some camps and stuff going on, visits, official visits, big official visit weekend. We broke a whole bunch of news on USCFootball.com about these official visitors. I think most people thought there was going to be 3. There ended up being 7 or something like that. But 3 commitments coming out of that. So I don't know where you guys want to start.
Yeah, well, let me just listen them off so that everyone is aware. First off, there's 3-star offensive tackle Andrew Millick. He's 6'6", 295 pounds. There's 3-star offensive tackle Andres DeWerk. He's 6'7", 297, and then 3-star defensive tackle Kobe Pepe. I think that's how you say it. He's out of St. John Bosco, 6'1" and 294 pounds. So 2 more offensive lineman, and then 1 more defensive lineman for USC.
You did much better than you did on our podcast.
I really botched it on the podcast, but you won't know that because of the magic of editing.
So these guys haven't missed a lot of meals lately, it looks like. You know, some big guys.
Yeah,
some
definitely. I mean, you look at what they've done the last 2 weeks with offensive tackles. They've gotten 3 offensive tackles with DeWerk, Andrew Millick, and then Joey Wright as well. You got 6'7", 6'6", 6'6", 297, 297, 295. And, you know, I talked with someone on the staff, you know, about their recruiting and, you know, how much has it changed with the air raid offense. The offensive line, not so much. You know, it's not necessarily that they're going out and finding, you know, these guys for the air raid, but it's going out and finding tackles because they're pretty thin at the tackle spots on the team. They've got a lot of guys that can play the interior but you don't necessarily want an Andrew Voorhees. He's played some tackle. He played his freshman year. He ended up moving out to right tackle during one of the games because of an injury, but that's not a guy you want out there. They want the tall guys. They want the guys with the wingspan, especially in this air raid offense. So, it's been a priority to go out and find some tackles. Now, hey, these aren't the 4- and 5-star guys. Well, guess what? There's only one 5-star offensive lineman in the 24/7 Sports rankings right now.
Yeah.
And there's only one offensive lineman in the top 50 in California. So USC is going out and finding guys that fit what they're looking for. And the one guy that's the top 50 is Miles Muro. Now, that's a guy they're still recruiting. That's a guy they're going after, but he's not a tackle prospect. I know he's playing tackle for Modern Day, but he's a guy that's going to be an interior guy at the next level. So
might be a center or something.
He could be a center, could be a guard. He's a mauler. He's a guy I love watching him play. He's got a mean streak to him. He really locked up Kayvon Thibodeau at a couple of the camps last year, but he's a guy that's going to be an interior guy. He's not a 6'6", 6'7" guy. He's 6'2", 6'3", I think it is. So he's a guy that's going to be interior. They had to go find some tackle prospects, and that's what they've done. They brought in a bunch of guys, and, hey, we didn't know a ton of these guys when they came in. I've been going through basically comparing pictures versus profile pictures to find some of these guys and see who exactly all these guys were. Like, I had pictures of Andrew Millick. Didn't know who he was there, but I was like, that's a big dude. I'm going to make sure I get pictures of him at the elite camp. They've gone out and identified some guys, brought them in to see how they play and practice at these elite camps, and then from there have gone on to offer and take the commitments of these kids. So I think they've done a really good job of using the camp period to the best benefit. It's not just, okay, we want to get these kids on campus so we can talk to them and stuff. The elite camp is a little bit different than most camps. They put them through an actual practice.
Yeah.
They go and watch tape afterwards. They have a position meeting before, to go over what they're trying to teach, and so that kids are familiar with the coaching style, what they're going to get when they get to campus, with this coaching staff. So I think they've done a really good job of saying, we like these tackles. Let's see who we really like when we get our hands on them. We put them through the ringer of a practice and see how they perform. And I think they've done that, and they've done a really good job. And, they've come out with 4 offensive line commits the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, pretty crazy. And you want that in-person evaluation. You can talk about stars. We're not going to – stars do matter for sure. But when you want coaching staffs to be able to identify – players that maybe are a little bit under the radar, and maybe they move up to 4 stars or something at some point like that. But if you get them on campus and you see them going through, like Shotgun said, the meetings, the practices, what you expect them to do when they get there, and a guy like Tim Drevno says, "Hey, this could be my guy," and they go with it. And we've seen in a lot of these air raid schemes. I mean, there's a premium on tackles. You want those tall guys that are hard to get around. You're getting the ball out fast, so it's not like you need someone that can stand up at defensive end for 5 seconds or anything. But just your big body out there with long arms, and it's really hard for those rush ends to get around there. And we've seen a lot of success in Washington State with Mike Leach, guys like that. And it looks like that's sort of the direction that USC is going. Not necessarily, we haven't really seen that kind of in the past. There's probably been more guys on the interior, and some of the tackles weren't necessarily the 6'6", 6'7" types. Some were, but that now it seems like that's a run of what they're trying to do now.
I mean, USC has had some big tackles. Let's not pretend like they haven't had.
Zach Banner
6'9" and 370 pounds, or a guy like Chad Wheeler was more of a development guy, but he did have the height and stuff. And that's they've kind of found the in between. They're finding tackles that are the size. Now they're going to have to bulk up a little bit. They're going to have to get college strength versus high school strength and stuff like that. But they're going out and identifying guys that they might not be rated as highly now, but hey, if they're rated highly when they come out of college, that's a much better thing. And that's the thing with offensive linemen too, is it's the hardest position to identify because you don't see as many reps as far as, because we see the kids at 7-on-7 all the time. That's, you're not seeing offensive lineman, defensive lineman there. But also it's hard to identify guys that may be 40 or 50 pounds different, when they get to college, or they may change their body composition when they get to college. And it's a little bit different. You kind of project receivers and stuff. You kind of project where that guy's going to be, even if he puts on 15 pounds. You kind of see exactly what that guy is going to be, and maybe it gains a little bit of speed or he gains a little bit of something. But offensive lineman can be completely different, and it's hard to really measure without getting a true shuttle time on every kid and some of the other drills. It's hard to measure an offensive lineman with what we can see. You look at the game tape and you try to identify, but how many times are they going up against a really good defensive end? In the training league, yeah, that's going to happen. But is that happening for every kid? DeWorks from Los Gatos, it's kind of in the middle of nowhere in
NorCal, yeah.
Southern Bay Area. So where exactly, what kind of competition is he facing? We don't, you don't really necessarily see the guys going against quality guys all the time. Whereas the receivers and DBs and stuff, you see them in 7-on-7 and go, okay, I've seen him against Elias Ricks. I've seen him against Darion Greenmore and Clark Phillips. Let me see how he compares there with a receiver. It's just not the same with offensive defense linemen, because even when you do see them in camp settings and one-on-one settings and seeing those, it's not with pads.
Yeah.
Unless the kid's good enough to get invited to the opening, now we get you get a good chance of seeing how good they really are then. But otherwise, it's hard to kind of identify them as well as the other positions, I think.
Something real quick, Keely. Sometimes you can watch them play another sport, like offensive linemen that can throw the discus or a shot put. When they play basketball, you can kind of see some of that. And there's some of the athleticism there where if you're not getting shuttle times all the time, you have a pretty good idea. Like, oh, that guy can. He's like a champion discus thrower. Like, yeah, he's got pretty good feet, I would say.
Yeah. So in that sense, should USC fans be concerned about 3-star rankings? And in that sense, just going to a question real quick, SNS Productions said, what are the chances that the new offensive lineman recruits rise in their rankings?
And that's the thing. These guys, now that they're USC commits, we'll have more eyeballs on them. We're going to see them more often. And from us doing isolation highlights, our national analysts might see them and say, that guy's better than I knew that he was. So they may bump up their rankings. Or at the same token, they get more footage and you go, I don't know so much about that guy.
I mean, they're probably not going to get bumped down or anything. But yeah, I mean, you can get a bump when you get offers from big schools. So, Alabama offers a kid that not a lot of people know about, and potentially the rankings go up a little bit. I think that can certainly happen. But I think what Shotgun said is more relevant, where you're more aware of these guys now, and the Greg Biggins of the world and the Brandon Huffmans, they might see him a little bit. Well, now he's a USC commit. And they're like, oh, okay, they can kind of check him out more. And we do. Now we'll see him at a camp or something. We'll put up an isolation highlight. And, Brian Doan on the East Coast is getting to see these guys a little bit more. So you can see more of them. And if they like what they see, I think they could certainly get a bump up. But, I wouldn't be concerned. I think it's nice. You want the coaches to be able to identify the players that they want. And I think last year the 3-stars were more of a desperation ploy at the end because they struck out on a lot of the 4-stars. I don't think that's the case right now. If a coaching staff is evaluating guys that they like, then you kind of have to go with what they're saying. If their evaluation is wrong, you'll find out later. But this is more of a by design, where last year I think they kind of tried to sell it. It was by design, but it wasn't by design. It was more just the situation that you end up 5-7 and you struck out a lot of the guys that you really wanted at first.
And usually the rankings, we are a little bit hesitant at 24/7 Sports to just throw out 5-star rankings all the time. That's why you finish with 32. That's just the way the 24/7 rankings are. You finish with 32 because there's 32 NFL draft picks. But right now there's not 32 5-star guys. Yeah. So we wait a little bit and see who earns that before just giving it out there. And it's similar with some of these guys, especially the 3-star guys, where who's gone to Los Gatos to high school to see Andres to work? It probably hasn't happened. I don't know if anyone's seen him, in game action. We watch the highlight tapes. You see all that stuff. But like I said, you don't know the competition necessarily. So now that he's a commit, or now when kids start getting some more offers because the coaches have gone out and seen them, during the spring evaluation period, we go, oh, okay, well, wait, this guy's just picked up 5 offers from different schools. I need to check him out. I need to see what it's about. That doesn't necessarily bump their ranking up, but it leads us to go see them. And then if we see them and we see, okay, this guy's better than what I knew previously, then those rankings can bump up. And that's what can happen for these guys. Now, I don't think people should be upset about that people should be upset about how the USC's gotten 3-star linemen. Don't worry about it. It's okay. They got the guys they were looking for. Like you said, I think it's much different than at the end of the cycle last year going out and offering a bunch of kids. And, I've heard from some people that there were some offers thrown out to some kids, local kids, and they're like, you're offering me now? Like, right. I'm committed to a different Pac-12 school, and you want to offer me in the last, a week before signing day? No, I'm not going to come flip over now that you just suddenly would start recruiting me.
Yeah.
And, I think USC's doing a much better job recruiting, just kind of an overall recruiting assessment. It's not just that they're bringing in the 5-star kids and saying, okay, we'll give you the preferential treatment. We'll give you, all the bells and whistles. Each of those elite camps, they had a setup where, there's 75 to 125 kids probably at those elite camps. Probably each kid that wanted to got to go through a little photo shoot. That's not something they did in the past.
Yeah.
And hey, what does it hurt USC to do it? They either have a staff photographer or they hire somebody for a day and it costs them $100 or $200. Well, you made that kid, and now if you come back to that kid at the end of the cycle, now it's not like, hey, you haven't talked to me all year. Now you're doing. No, I had a relationship with you, and you try to. It seems like they're keeping things, just a little bit warm as far as keeping things on the burner and stuff more than they did in the past. I just think they're more active in recruiting as a staff as a whole.
Yeah.
So we actually have some live callers.
Oh, okay, great.
So let's go to them. First is Jordan from Dallas, Texas. Hello, Jordan. You're on the line.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
Good, Jordan. I'll be in your town in a few days, so buy me a beer or something.
Awesome. Sure.
I'll buy you a beer.
Don't take you for something.
Yeah.
The deal. Well, Fern, I love listening to the show, and I love listening to you guys' takes on things. But I was wondering, with all the culture changes happening at SC, is a 10 or 11 win season out of the question for this upcoming season?
Hey, Jordan, good question. I don't think it's out of the question because of the talent, and really, it's more of it's kind of an indication of how bad things were last year. They were a very talented team. The talent level was here. If you're watching again, if you're just listening, sorry, kid, I'm putting my hand up high. But the production was way down here. It was very low, and I think fixing some of the problems that were there. Not everything's fixed. Clay Helton didn't overnight become, Nick Saban or Urban Meyer or something like that. But I think they did a good job addressing things like some of the discipline stuff with the penalties and really fixing the staff. Maybe not as far as maybe we would have liked, but man, you take two out of place guys, Tim Drevno coaching running backs, Kerry Colbert coaching tight ends. They're in their natural positions now. Just doing that helps. Getting in a Graham Harrell, having one person running the offense and coaching the quarterbacks as opposed to three. There's a lot of little things, and having a Ben Griffith that can flip the field. There's all these little things that went wrong last year that you feel are going to go right this year. So things fall the right way. I think that's certainly, it's not out of the question to do something like that. It'd be tough to do 11. I think like 10 wins is reasonable. Like maybe losing to Washington and Notre Dame on the road. But I think a lot of things would have to, like the things that Clay Helton fixed would have to really work. And I don't know how different the culture really is. They've changed a lot of things, but in the end of the day, it's still a lot of the same people. Are some of the same bad habits going to kind of bubble to the surface after the first couple games? It's hard to say, but I wouldn't say it's out of the question, Jordan.
I think it's feasible. I would think, if I'm projecting right now, I would say an 8 or 9 win season is probably more likely than a 10 or 11 win season. However, if this offense goes the way we think it will, suddenly things change. It changes the dynamic of the team. It changes the mindset of the team. It's not defense is like, we got to hold this team to 10 points or less, or Cal will beat us. Oh wait, they did. Was it 15, 14? It's not going to be as much pressure on the defense this year. So I think they can play a little bit more loose. I think you've got some talented guys that are stepping up now. You got Palaia Naitiote, Talanoa Hufunga, Isaiah Polamau. They're going to have to step up, obviously. The secondary is a big question mark. There's some big question marks on this team. The offensive line has to play better than it did last year. But everything is pointing in the right direction. I feel like if you were to ask me about USC going, a 10-win season versus like a UCLA turning around and adding, they were 3-9, so adding 5 wins there, I would think that's harder for UCLA than USC.
Yeah.
Because I just think there's so much talent on that USC roster if they just get put in the right positions. And that's going to be the big question. Can the staff put them in the right position, lead them in the right direction? And so far, so good.
Yeah.
From the spring and what Graham Harrell's done and, the PRPs and what we kind of seen from them, everything looks like it's going in the right direction. Now, once you get in the mouth, do you get back up?
Yeah.
You spit it out, or do you lay on the ground and curl up in the fetal position?
Yeah.
We don't know that yet about this team as a whole.
Yeah.
That's still something to be determined.
There was a bunch of close, kind of silly losses last year. Like we said, a lot of improvements. The one thing on the other side, though, the schedule's harder. So there's more opportunity. I mean, there's a lot more losable games, I think. A 12-win Fresno State team on the road against the BYU. You got Oregon instead of Oregon State. there's more opportunities to lose. So those things that he fixed have to go right for something like that to happen. But you look at that there'll be some really good wins. You're beating Stanford, Utah, Oregon. Like there's a lot of good wins on that if you can go 10 wins and you say you lose to Washington and Notre Dame. It's nice. It'll be a nice group of wins if you're able to do that. But a lot of things are gonna have to fall correctly.
Let's just say there ain't no cupcakes on that schedule.
No.
If BYU and Fresno are your non-conference besides Notre Dame, that ain't easy.
No.
Yeah. The pieces are there. I'm just reluctant to say any numbers because if you would have asked me this time last year, would USC go 5-7, I would have said no.
No, that's
so,
true.
and looking at mock game week, that was a great week of practice. And then how did they respond the rest of the season? Things
mock game
change.
week.
So I'm reluctant. But thanks, Jordan, for the call and your question. Let's go to another caller, Richard from SLC. Hello, Richard. I believe you're on the line now. Hello?
Hey, Keely.
Hi.
Yeah. Hey, Keely, Ryan, Shotgun.
Hey, Richard.
I just wanted to ask a quick question here. Looking at the schedule, from all three of you guys, which game are you guys most interested in looking forward to watching? I'm gonna say it's gonna be Washington because that's the first, I think, away game that we're gonna be tested. But I wanted to know your guys' individual thoughts on which game you're most looking forward to seeing SC play in.
Richard, interesting. So he's saying BYU is not going to be a test.
Yeah, don't sleep on BYU. They got a
Yeah.
pretty good quarterback from what I've read.
Yeah. He's good. He was 18 of 18 for 370 yards and 4 touchdowns in the bowl game, so he was pretty good.
It's just a bowl game.
Yeah.
It's not a big situation or anything.
Zach Wilson, I believe his name is. He was a freshman last year. This one's easy for me. I think this is the most important game on the schedule. It's Utah because I think whoever wins that game is going to win the South. I don't see Arizona State, Colorado, UCLA really contending. I think it's going to come down to USC and Utah. Most likely, the winner of that game will be, the winner of the South. Now, USC, if they could win that game and like lose a bunch of other ones and lose it, but I don't think Utah is going to be, beating USC and not winning the South. I think if Utah wins that game, like they win the South. And as long as USC is like pretty good and they win that game, they're doing pretty well. I think they win the South. So that's the one I would look forward to.
I think Washington, it's the return. The last time you played Washington was, you upset them. You return up there. Obviously, they're going to have a little bit of, revenge factor there for that. You go on the road, it's early-ish in the season. It's not too late. So I think it's a big litmus test. You always get the early litmus test with Stanford, but things seem to change after that Stanford game.
Yeah.
We always go, you know what, this is going to be –
wow, they look amazing, and then they
the
stink.
opposite.
Yeah.
You
You kind of want to stink against Stanford, and then the season will be better, maybe.
stink but barely win.
See, but that didn't happen last season either.
Well, they
so.
stunk
true.
and they weren't. They
There was a
didn't
lot
just
of stink.
they were awful in that game. But yeah, it seems like that's going to be a real test early, and we'll see what this USC team is made of going on the road there to try to face them. And that's a team that's probably going to be ranked in the top 10 then.
Plus tailgating.
Ooh.
Yeah, tailgating's
That's
great
fun.
at Washington. So.
I'll be at a wedding.
Oh, boo.
Oh, good.
Keely?
Yeah, I would say probably Washington. I think that's a good call. Utah I would go for, but I feel like when Utah comes to California, it's just a different vibe. USC has a really hard time winning at Utah, but I just feel like USC
Utah has a really hard time winning it.
Neither
USC.
team has won
It
on the
switches.
opponents, right?
Yeah.
Like they've never won.
And there have been really close games in that matchup.
Yeah, so that's why I wouldn't go for that. I think UW. I think that stretch though, BYU, Utah, UW, and Notre Dame. That's a rough stretch. There's a bye week in between UW and Notre Dame, but I think you'll definitely know what this USC team is made of in that stretch.
And it might just be something that actually changes as the season wears on. Like you lose like a Fresno State, then it makes a lot of games not really matter after that.
True.
Or if you go into the Washington game 4-0, then it does become then it's like, hey, this is like for national prominence, not just trying to win the South. Like I'm trying to set realistic expectations, but if they like the air raid, with Graham Harrell looks amazing, and they're like blowing these guys away, then the games at Washington and Notre Dame I think would be all that much more important. If they're going in those 4-0 as opposed to like 2-2 or something.
Yeah.
And depending on how things plays out, Rich Kid brought up he's most interested in the Oregon game. That one could be a fascinating game as well. A lot of Southern California kids being pulled to Oregon right now. They want to play against USC. They want to show against their hometown school type of thing. So, that could be a really interesting game as well.
Yep.
Well, thanks for the call, Richard.
Yeah, great calls.
We appreciate it. Before we dive into questions, which we will quickly, Shotgun, you saw yesterday's PRP. Anything notable from that day?
Trayvon Sidney stopped by. He parked his car in the middle of the street and then ran into the locker room to get some stuff, I think. So just seeing him back on campus was interesting. But Jacob Lichtenstein was in a boot. It's a continuation. You're seeing a lot of the same drills and stuff that they did during spring practices. At least on the offensive side, that's where I focused yesterday. It's continuation of continuing to get 3 or 4 quarterbacks and everyone throwing at the same time, a bunch of routes, a bunch of throws, everyone working on the same stuff over and over. So it's the same thing we saw in the spring where everything's installed. It's not everybody looking at a sheet of paper like it was before, like, all right, which play we're going to run. It's everyone knows. And it was kind of interesting that Matt Fink, because he's injured right now, had the minor surgery previously, that he was kind of the ringleader. He was kind of, coaching everyone up and telling everyone what play to run or whatever it may be. It was what it seemed like from afar. We're not inside the gates anymore. We're watching from afar. But, from what we could see, it looked like he was kind of, taking on that leadership role. And that's an interesting development just because Graham Harrell said – at the end of the spring is like one of the things that will help determine the quarterback battle will be who is a leader in the offseason and who takes over that leadership role. So, anything we see on the quarterbacks is something we always note just because, it's going to be still up in the air until they name a starter and whether JT holds on to it or not.
Yeah.
Let's actually dive into questions
Okay.
if we want to. AKA Boone321 says, excluding early enrollees, who has the most polished new incoming freshman? Who has been the most polished new incoming freshman?
Excluding early enrollees. Well, it's really hard to see. Like, you can't.
We haven't. I mean, those guys are learning right now. The new freshmen that are on campus, it's kind of that period during the summer PRPs where it's kind of, I've got photos from previous where it was Rasheem Green teaching up Marlon Tuipulotu, or Marvell Tell taking Isaiah Polamau and Bubba Bolden under his wing, just kind of showing them, all right, here's where you're supposed to be, those type things. So it's not like they're doing a ton of work right now. The ones guys that we do see are the wide receivers. I mean, Drake London, it continues to impress me every time I see him on a field or a court anywhere. He's just a supreme athlete. So, just seeing those guys out there, seeing Chris Steele out there. We haven't seen Brew McCoy, or at least I haven't with the PRPs I've been to, participating yet. But we did see Trey Davis for the first time yesterday, the freshman from Federal Way, the cornerback. So, just seeing the guys out there and they're trying to get the hang of things and kind of get in tune with everyone else. I think that's more what right now is rather than showing their stuff. I think that maybe a little bit next month we'll see that. They'll start up some competition periods a little bit more than they have the last couple weeks. So hopefully in July we'll get to see some of those and hear what the players have to say about them as well.
Yeah. Keely, one of the things we were going to talk about, I'll just do this real quick. So there was an NCAA.
Oh, yeah.
They issued a statement today. So as you know, there's the transfer portal now. There's a lot of waivers that were being granted. And Stuart Mandel wrote an interesting column today. A lot of people wrote responding to what the NCAA said. So a lot of waivers are being granted. There's been a lot of tweets about you have a much better chance if you're trying to get a waiver and you have a lawyer write something, and then the NCAA is like, okay, you can transfer right away. They're going to try to rein that in a little bit, and it's kind of interesting from his column. There's 2 cases I thought they're kind of strange. One of them is if a coach basically runs a player off, they want a written statement from the athletic director. And Stewart's like, well, how is that? You're going to you think an athletic director is going to write down the coach ran this kid off? And so it just seems like a very just more arbitrary just crap that these kids have to deal with. And the other one is if you get a hardship waiver because you're moving home for a family illness or something, they want doctor's notes and things like that, written documentation about that and how the player would be helping with the recovery of the sickness or the injury or illness or whatever it is. And again, it just seems kind of silly. We're not going to let you transfer if all your paperwork is in a row from grandma's, cancer or whatever. It just seems completely. It's the NCAA. It just seems completely asinine. And I know you had a Twitter question, someone asking if it would affect Chris Steele or Brew McCoy. Yeah,
and I didn't even see what had come out this morning. But the answer in all these questions is, will it affect someone who's already transferred? No. because if you've transferred, then you're basically under the guidelines that happened when you transferred. So because Brew, McCoy, and Chris Steele are already enrolled at USC, any changes that are made now or in the future leading up to the season will not affect it. I would find it very hard to believe they would affect them, just because that wasn't the legislation at the time. So you go by the rules that were in place when you did actually make the transfer.
Yeah, and one of the I forget I didn't call him that one of the. It was either player or athletic director. I think it was one of the athletic directors made a suggestion that you could, transfer it, just change the rules so it's not arbitrary, because that's what it is. You just have no idea. It goes in this black hole. The NCAA has said yes to people that just seem not to have much of a reason to transfer, and they've said no to people that have great reasons to transfer and not let them be immediately eligible. But the solution, and Stuart Mandel was a long time he doesn't want people to be able to transfer right away. It's just going to cause all these problems. But he's so tired of this. He's like, screw it. Just let them transfer now. And the proposal was you can transfer once and you'll be immediately eligible. And then after that, you would have to sit out, which that makes sense, I guess.
So that used to be the rule in college baseball. Division I baseball, you could transfer. I mean, the guy that comes to mind just because he was a local kid that I played against was Micah Owings, who was at Georgia Tech, and he transferred immediately to Tulane, went to be their starting third baseman. Barry Zito transferred from UC Santa Barbara to USC, without sitting out a year or anything, which opens up kind of a communication issue. You have to stay on every coach about how much communication they're having, because the players have to basically go into a portal or something instead of people just reaching out and going, hey, it's kind of free agency. Like you see somebody at a smaller school, if Washington sees somebody performing well at Eastern Washington, be like, hey, why don't you come over here?
Yeah.
Because that would happen much more frequently. But that gives the players so much more leeway there, and it's much more just cut and dry that it's the simplest answer. Now, because of that, the NCAA won't do it.
Right.
It makes too much sense to just do that.
They have more control now, this arbitrariness. Like, they can control what's going on. If they want to change a narrative and go in one direction, they have a say in it,
Yeah, so it's an interesting development, and we'll see how it plays out. But it's hard for me to believe the NCAA would actually go to that rule, because that would make sense, and that's usually not what they do.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see how that continues to develop. Moving back to questions, Johnny 5 says, how's Amon-Ra St. Brown looking?
Swole.
So Amon-Ra St. Brown was a guy that was brought up by John Baxter last night, actually, as a guy who, you see is becoming a leader already, and that's something that he said that he was talking about him and a couple other guys. He said he's been on campus 12 months, but he's already a leader.
Yeah.
And that's just tells you the work ethic that Amon-Ra St. Brown has. And, that guy just, every time we've seen him, we're just like, that guy's going to be a star.
Yeah.
Every time we saw him, at Modern Day in 7-on-7 camps, just because of his work ethic, the way he runs his routes, and he's doing nothing but continuing to improve.
Yeah. We mentioned the event. I don't know, Keely, if you want to put up a couple of those pictures. But Jake Olson getting that WWE championship belt from Jacob Olin was pretty awesome. And it was good. We had fun about it. You can check out the podcast, but with Matt Barkley, he had some really fun stories, sharing about his favorite moment ever in college was beating Ohio State, as a true freshman. He said that's as loud as he's ever heard anything. He's like, I've been at concerts right next to the speaker, and it wasn't as loud as it was at Ohio State. And when Stephon Johnson scored that last touchdown and quieted everybody, he absolutely loved it. But some really great stories. John Baxter, I've been pretty critical. We've all been pretty critical of some of the ways special teams run. I thought John Baxter was great. He did an awesome job last night. And Jake Olson's amazing, so he deserves that championship belt.
I enjoyed Matt Barkley's story of going to play golf with Jake for the first time and thinking, I'm finally going to beat someone.
Yes.
And that did not happen
Because he's
at all.
blind, yeah. When I played with him, I knew, no, he's better than me. And I knew it. I wasn't going to, I didn't care what if he could see or not. I'm like, I know his handicap's better than mine, so I'm not going to feel bad if I don't beat him.
Sija on YouTube says, do you guys think that USC has the best chance of getting Bijan Robinson or Mookie Cooper or both?
It might be Seha as well. Could be.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Bad pronunciation.
UCLA had a baseball player named Moises Seha. So that's why I know that pronunciation. But I think Bijan Robinson, USC still in a good spot with him. Yeah. I think that I talked to him after his visit there, between his visit to Texas, because he took visits to Ohio State, USC, and Texas all last week. In a recent event he was at, he was holding those three hats, even though UCLA was kind of considered his leader going into that week. And that week changed things, it appears. And UCLA's not going to go full bore on the recruiting under Chip Kelly. That's just not the way. They're not going to go all out in recruiting. But these other 3 schools have, and I think Bijan kind of likes that. So, I think USC made a really good impression with him, and I think they're right in the mix with that. If they win, they have a really good chance at him. If they lose, they have no chance at him.
Yeah.
Pretty simple there.
He's got a very narrow window when he wants to commit, right?
Yeah, from somewhere between July and the end of the season. But that tells you if he's considering July, that
He could commit, yeah.
He could commit soon, because like Ryan said, July's not far away. But he's still considering making an early decision before his season is not necessarily good for USC. However, if he waits a little bit and USC wins, then that's even better for USC, I would say.
We have a Facebook question from John Lau. He says, it seems... Yes, what's up?
Mookie Cooper, we haven't gotten in touch with him yet to get an update on him, but we're still working on that.
Okay.
Well, there you have it. John Lau on Facebook says, it seems like the defensive line doesn't get mentioned a lot. I expect a much better performance this year with Coach Chad K. Do you guys agree?
Yeah, I mean, that's another one of those things where, I mean, we all like Kenichi Udeze, but he was hired as, he was a very inexperienced defensive line coach, and he comes in as a, assistant strength coach and then was put in that position. Chad K, I think it was it ESPN or SI radio or something with Andy Staples, and tried to pronounce his name on the air, and I haven't done it for a while. It's like, no, I'm not going to. They were laughing at me. We're just going to call him Chad K. And they should tell you the pronunciation. Like, yeah, you do. But even trying to read it, like Chad ha, like there's how many ahahas are in there. And they started singing "Take on Me" from Aha, which is kind of funny. But I think that's an upgrade. That you're talking about a guy with a lot of experience, and there's a lot of depth on that defensive line. That's one of those areas where, wow, those guys might come out like gangbusters. Now, the front's changed a little bit, too. If you do see, like, a Christian Rector with his hand on the ground on one side and Mullet Man Connor Murphy maybe on the other side, like, that's going to be a different-looking front than what you've seen in the past. And who knows? I mean, it could be a lot different. But, Jay Tufele is really good. Marlon Tuipulotu, Brandon Peely. I think they have the horses there. Could have a really nice rotation. And it's hard to say, but, I mean, I think that's probably a coaching upgrade that'll help that unit.
I don't know if it necessarily is a coaching upgrade, but those guys are all older. You don't lose much off that line. You lose Malik Dorton, who is a solid piece in there. If you want to count Porter Gustin, he wasn't there for the most of the last 2 years to begin with. When he was in there, he was really good. But that pass rush unit and that run stuffing unit, I think they're going to have more defensive linemen on the field, which entices you to practice that much harder because now there's more opportunities. And just the fact that Brandon Peely, who Clay Helton said that had a sophomore slump, and they approached him about that, and he had a really good spring. Marlon Tuipulotu being a year away from that back injury and being healthy, and then you add those guys. Jacob Lichtenstein, is a guy that continues to progress. If Liam Jimmons was over there, I would think he was a guy that would be in there, but he's making waves on the other side of the ball. So I think that the fact that Liam Jimmons, who was there. I think the stat was he had the most pressures per pass rush. I think is the stat that I pulled up on him or came up with on him previously. The fact that they moved him to the offensive line tells me how deep they are on the defensive line. Because he was doing really well in his few opportunities he had, and instead you got him moved to the offensive line. The defensive line is going to be really good, I think.
Yeah. I just think, like Shotgun said, I think this is a defining season for guys like Jay Tufele, Brandon Peely, Marlon Tuipulotu, Christian Rector. Those are guys who they've had their moments. Can they be consistent this year? Can they rise to the level of production that we've seen them do in certain spots, but can they do that consistently? And I think that will be answered this year one way or another.
And it's a draft year for all of them. They're all eligible to be drafted, all 4 of those guys that Keely just mentioned. So that puts a little extra onus on those guys to try to have a good season, big season.
Yeah. Keeping on the theme of the defense, LDR on YouTube says, how would you guys rank our defense in the Pac-12? How many interceptions will the defense have this year?
Oh, I mean, it's an unproven secondary. It's hard to say. I mean,
and it's turnovers are, to an extent, they're kind of whimsical. Whether you get them or not, whether the ball, if a tip ball at the line of scrimmage, does that fall in the hands of Cameron Smith, or is he diving for it and he can't get it? Because those happen.
And USC's rate of tip ball to interceptions last year, I think, was pretty bad.
It was terrible.
So
because they were leading the nation in
like tip balls, but like
early in the season, but deflections without an interception. That's what they were leading it with.
Which is, a lot of the turnovers can be. There's a little bit of kind of luck involved, but it is going to be a much less experienced secondary. So I think that's hard to say. I mean, like pick a number there, but if you get a whole bunch of interceptions, I mean, the turnover ratio was bad last year too. I think that's got to improve overall. But if the secondary can come up and some of those young guys are picking some passes off, I mean, I think you give the ball back to this offense, it'd be huge.
And is that something that's going to be emphasized? Because usually when you emphasize something, it improves. So that's something I would definitely emphasize.
That was the Sark thing, right? Sark always did that.
And, that was something that in the spring, they're working on the strip drills. They're working on some of those things. So I think that turnovers are something that is in the coach's mind at least that, hey, we got to improve on that. So we'll see in the fall what kind of drills the DBs are doing and try to improve on that. Even the linebackers and defensive linemen, the tip drills and different things like that. What are you working on to try to improve this season?
So this next question that we have, I've seen a lot on both Facebook and YouTube. A lot of people want to know about this. Jesse kind of sums it up. He says, what are your opinions of the strength and conditioning program so far, and is there a notable difference in an approach from the former regime?
A lot of steak eating, a lot of weights being thrown around.
Lifting heavy and eating thick, as Aaron Osmond likes to say.
Hashtag strength training, and then they put bullies a lot. It's he's very active on the social medias.
He's very consistent with his message. It's not a lot of words on there.
Like if any of us, I think he's tweeted all of us where we've said something like, "Hey, there was a great workout." And he's like, "Hashtag strength training." Whatever the message is, I think it's being received. It's sort of one of those things where we talk about this for other, like use this analogy other times. But if you want to go on a diet, I mean, almost any diet's probably going to work if you stick to the diet. Like it's just hard to stick to diet. A lot of diet, like if you're like you can only drink water and drink the cayenne pepper like this, like that's hard to do. But a diet of all cupcakes, that you could stick to that easy, but it's not going to work. But most diets that are reasonable,
I mean, it'll work in one way.
Most diets that are reasonable, if you stick to it, it would work. And I think this is the same sort of thing. It's like you need to just like buy in, and I think the players have bought in. So you're seeing different results there. I mean, you're seeing, and it's a different philosophy. There's a lot of strength coaches have different philosophies, and this is more about old school. Put more plates on there, eat a steak, and push those weights, And I think the players, whatever they were getting before, this is a different message, and they're in it, and they're buying in, and they're sticking to this diet.
I just think the attitude that the guys are bringing every day, that we hear them when they're coming out of the PRPs, I just think it's a different attitude, and from the few things that we've heard from the players as they leave, Jordan Iosefa saying, he's never been so dead, he's never died so. I never can get it. Keely, rescue me.
You always get it wrong. He said, "I never died so hard before."
So hard, yeah.
Okay.
One of these days I'll just write it down and have it.
So you'd use it a lot. You should probably know it by now.
Well, that's the only thing we're hearing from the players because we don't get to talk to them.
And you got in trouble for
I got in trouble for listening to what someone said rather than asking.
It's like, we can't interview them, but if they walk out of the, and they start talking and you hear it, like it's okay. Like it's airspace that you're allowed to listen to.
Yeah. So, anyways, him saying that, and he's a senior, the response that you're seeing from the players, I think, is a positive. There's not just – it just seemed like at times it wasn't the same attitude in the past. I'll just say that. I think that the players are coming to work and they're excited about working. And the gains that some of them are seeing, I think they're excited about. And, they're flexing and posing and stuff. That's common. Football players seem to like to do that but when there's a camera around. But – it's a group thing, they're with their teammates, a lot of smiles and stuff, even after what they're deeming as very tough workouts.
Yeah. I mean, I imagine it's like anything you do, like if you were taking piano lessons for like 3 years and it was the same teacher and you were doing the same sort of thing and you have a different one coming in and they're like teaching a whole different like style or whatever, you're like, oh, okay, like it's something, or if you're taking if you're working out, you've done the same workout for a year straight, and you do something different, like, okay, this is different. I think the players have just responded at least to something that's been different. Probably a lot of positives there, but it's certainly just changing it's just another change in the gears. Like this team was stuck in second gear or whatever. They needed to change gears, and I think they've done that in a lot of different fronts. And when it all settles down, we'll know in September, like, oh, all those little changes seem to work. They all fell into place. Or there's still a lot of dysfunction. They just changed the way they're doing things.
And speaking of gains, Team Used a Great on YouTube says, has AA and his strength program been able to put some muscle on John Houston? A very specific question.
Oh, have you seen John out there?
John Houston looks the same to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I'm not a body composition expert. I'll leave that to Dan Weber.
Dan's pretty good at that
I have
stuff.
to actually-
He'll tell you what his shoes are like, and he'll tell he's good at those things.
I have to take a photo from 2 years ago and compare it to a photo from this year or whatever. I'll do that on Twitter after this, just for you guys of John
TVs.
Houston.
Yeah.
I'll post that side by side.
Yeah, follow at Keely is my name, right? Is that where?
Yes,
She'll
exactly.
retweet him, so you don't need
Yeah,
to follow
it's
Shotgun.
perfect.
You only
It's
just follow
perfect.
Keely. No, they have a little Twitter battle kind of going on.
You made that a thing.
I made it a thing?
Yes, you did.
Okay.
We have a question on Facebook from Jeff. He says, "Does Chris Hawkins have a relationship with the Flo brothers?"
Yeah, they're
Yeah,
from Upland, and Chris Hawkins is Mr. IE, so I would
Yeah.
say yes.
Yeah, I think they're not, are they ground zero?
He didn't do any. He didn't participate in any 7-on-7 this summer.
Yeah. So Chris's dad is he runs the ground zero 7-on-7 team and stuff. So, but yeah, Chris is, he's Rancho Cucamonga, but he's a big IE guy.
He's like the mayor of IE.
Yeah.
The mayor.
Everyone knows him out there. It seems like.
Thanks, Jeff, for the question.
We had another question from Rich Kid. He said, "Is Joey Ray a diamond in the rough?"
I mean, I
Joey
don't
Ray.
necessarily say he was a diamond in the rough. He's a guy that I saw at Oakland and was like, that guy's a dude. I don't know who he is, but I saw him and knew from watching him. I don't know if you want to call him a diamond in the rough. Wait till the end rankings before we declassify who's the diamonds in the
Yeah.
rough. I mean, a guy like Trey Davis, who had no offers when USC offered him and took him, or if you want to even go further on, Mason Murphy's a 2021 guy who had no offers, but I think he's going to be a national guy. USC offered him after their camp.
They were just the first ones.
He's only played 2 years, and he's 6'6" and 290 pounds. I think he's going to get much better as he continues and going to be a national guy. But if you look at it and you say, well, USC is his first offer, does that make him a diamond in the rough? I have a hard time delineating how you want to classify diamond in the roughs.
But it's a good sign, though, if we see him at a camp, we're like, oh, that's a dude. And you're like, oh, he got an offer or whatever. Like, oh, that makes sense. He looks like, if a guy stands out, you're like, yeah, they're probably going to be pretty good.
Brandon Jones on YouTube says, "How is Stephen Carr looking in PRPs?"
We can't see.
I mean, we see some of it. He looks fine. He's catching the ball in the backfield, but it's not like there's not really straight competition. It's not like 7-on-7 in a tournament or something. It's not like they're trying to break somebody's ankles or something to dive for a touchdown type of thing. They're running routes. They're running the plays they're going to do over and over and over. There hasn't been a ton of the competition portions of it. There has been some 7-on-7 in team, but it's not like it's kind of relaxed in that sense. So I wish they would go back to more competition. And also that might be because, like I said before, with the freshmen, it's kind of a teaching period right now. You might see more of that in July.
But he does. The hair game is on point. So
Hair looks good. His body looks good. So
we'll see if he's got that explosiveness.
it's all about the explosive burst. That's just what he didn't have last year.
The burst. We have an interesting question from Augustine on Facebook. He says, "Does Shotgun have a hat for each outfit he wears? Need to do a tunnel vision with Shotgun's hat collection."
That would be hard to bring in. I got about 180 of them.
We'd have
now,
to do
so
that remotely. Yeah.
I think it's 180 is where I'm at.
I think we
187.
moved some of them because we helped him move, so that we had to carry a bunch of hats.
Wow.
Yeah, but I mean, I just have a lot of I have a lot of hats, so it's easy to match with any outfit when you have enough.
Yeah, he definitely has more hats than like shirts. So
Yeah.
there's I think there's
That's
more
true.
hats than outfits. So it's
Easy
he can
to
find
match. AKA Boone321 on YouTube says, Jacob Lichtenstein, looked like he got some gains. Any update on his boot? So he was wearing a boot at the Tuesday's PRP.
Yeah, I don't think it's anything serious as far as the boot because he was out there still with the guys for portion of the PRP and was there for the team workout previous. So I don't think it's anything serious. Probably just precautionary. You see guys in boots more frequently than some other apparatus for
Mm-hmm.
injuries. Just because they just want that foot to stay stable and not moving. So I don't think it's anything serious. Yes, it does look like he's getting some gains as well.
Yeah.
From the guy that we saw.
He had some pictures of him in that group, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The guy we saw 2 years ago to coming in. Now that maybe there's a diamond in the rough. There you go. 3-star guy out of Florida that everybody was like, why are they going to Florida for this 3-star guy? And he's looking like he's going to be in the mix to get some good reps on that defensive line this year.
John on Facebook says, anything new on the Pac-12 private equity front?
Haven't heard anything on that. And John Wilner hasn't really put too much out there about it. I think there was couple weeks ago they had a meeting and they were. I think Larry Scott was making it sound like there was interested parties, and I think the number was like $750 million for 15%. But you're talking like a valuation of over $5 billion, which seemed kind of crazy. So I don't know at this point where this is going to end up, but my gut is it's not going to happen. But who knows? It's crazy. I think Larry Scott's going to try to do whatever he can to kind of get that other deal. I think his deal's up in like 2021 or 22, and then the big TV deal is 2024. I think he would like to be a part of that. So if he signs up again for another $5 million a year, he's going to be in a great spot. But that's just you're talking about 12 years of they were good for that first year of that contract, and like the 11 years after have been terrible, and they still got 4 years left, 5 years left on it. It's just a bad deal for the Pac-12. I don't see how the equity thing would work. There was news of Casey Wasserman, the super booster for UCLA, saying that he was going to try to get UCLA to go to the ACC. I think USC should certainly look into things like that before signing another Pac-12 deal. I know Dan Weber has been talking about that as well. The Pac-12 deals for major media market players like USC and UCLA is not good. Oregon State gets the exact same stuff. If USC wants to kind of bump up, what they get, which they should, I think that you have to at least explore doing something outside of the Pac-12 because it's run so poorly. I mean, maybe UCLA and USC go to the Big 12, and you compete there, or USC could do an independent thing. But just exploring that, I think, would put the Pac-12 on notice. And I don't think it's going to go over really well if you're seeing schools like start to explore things like that. Whoever's going to buy, the potential private equity buyers would be like, wait, what happens if UCLA leaves? Like, yeah, that's probably not going to be good for your coverage. Or USC is going to leave. Like, yeah, that $750 billion goes down to $500 billion, or $500 million. Yeah, so no super new updates or anything on that.
Let me just touch on the Casey Wasserman ACC. That shit ain't happening.
No, it's not happening. No.
Let's just stop all that now. And the article that had it was just like, well, Casey Wasserman's also has connection to the ACC, so maybe they would. There was no like real evidence that they're considering this. That it's not happening.
Right.
If they go anywhere, it would be the Big 12. You're not because you might can do that. Hey, UCLA basketball playing North Carolina Duke every year. That'd be great. That's a great matchup. But what about water polo and soccer and
softball,
track and field and flying those teams across the country every other weekend? That ain't happening. That ain't happening.
No, but I don't think it makes any sense. And I've talked to like David Woods, who covers UCLA. He's like, it's not going to happen. But I love the fact that you can float that out there. Like, you need that to be like, hey, people might leave. Maybe you should do better at your job, make things better. So, and I don't think it helps the equity deal either. If schools are actively exploring, like the Arizona schools could go join the Big 12 or something. I mean, there's Big 12 the Big 12 would love to have 12 teams, and they have 10. So you get a pair from the Pac-12, you could start. They were the carcass that everyone was kind of like, biting and taking pieces off of, several years back. And now it could be the Pac-12.
Well, that's how the WAC ended up with teams. The WAC has the most ridiculous. It's the Western Athletic Conference. It has a team in Chicago. It has a team in Kansas City. It has a team on the border into East Texas. And then it has Bakersfield and Cal Baptist now in Seattle. It's the four corners of half the, like 2/3 of the country. But the reason why that is because people came in and started picking away. The Mountain West took a team away. The Pac-12 takes, Arizona State and Arizona, when they came to the Pac-12, they were looking at whether they go to the WAC or not. So, those teams went to the Pac-12. That could happen to the Pac-12. The Pac-12 might end up with schools in, like, North Dakota or something because they're like, well, we lost. If USC and UCLA leave and go somewhere else, or Arizona, they start going, well, who are we going to bring in? We got to bring somebody in, right? Or else you get dissolved. And that's happened to some conferences in the past. You get dissolved, and then what's Larry Scott going to get paid then?
Right. I know. I think you just need to shake things up a little bit. So anyone just looking at the potential to leave any school, if Washington, Oregon want to look to join the Big Ten, I don't care. Like, just put pressure on Larry Scott and his $5 million a year that he makes, where he does a horrible job running the conference. Just, you got to do that. So bravo to Casey Wasserman, and USC should be doing that too.
We're reaching the top of the hour, so I'm going to do some rapid fire. Also, the peanut gallery of the YouTube is a little feisty with me because I skipped some questions, which is not intentional, people.
YouTube people, like, she's done really good with all the questions today. We've had a lot of questions pop up on the screen. Come on.
I'm coming. Loser, which is fitting, wanted to know, will Bryce Young flip to Alabama?
No.
No.
Are you happy now?
That's why
Are
I
you
didn't
happy
say
now?
it. That's why I didn't say it. There you have it. AKA Boone says, do you think the 4-3 or 3-4 is better for this team?
That's hard to say. I mean, the personnel right now, you would say, well, the 4-3 looks really good because you got a lot of depth on the defensive line. But you look back 2 years when you had Uchenna and Porter Gustin. Well, the 3-4 looks better because you get those guys both on the edge, and both those guys are really good pass rushers. So it kind of depends on your personnel. With the way the linebackers are now and how deep you are in the middle linebacker spot, you could definitely use some 3-4 and kind of split those guys out and use some guys at the different spots a little bit more than you do actively right now. So it just depends on your personnel and how you want to run it. It all like right this year right now, I'd say the 4-3 would be better for USC.
Yeah.
But last year before, I would say 3-4.
I like that too. I guess the only issue is going to be, I think Clancy really likes the 3-4. Is he being forced to, if they're going to do something he's not normally doing, not comfortable, it's like rotating, simplifying things. He's made changes, and he seems like a guy that's he likes doing things the way he likes to do things, and this year might be doing things that he doesn't, maybe not the way he wanted to.
I will point out something, and we saw some different rotations and stuff with the defensive line in the spring. One of the things I've noticed so far in PRPs is that they've run a lot of 3-down linemen, 1 stand-up pass rusher. So Hunter Eccles or Abdul Malik McClain, those type of guys, Elijah Winston on the edge with 3-down linemen. So you might see Christian Rector with his hand down, and we saw that when Christian Rector was thrown in for Porter Gustin, you saw that a little bit then. I think you might see some of that again this year instead of a strict 4-down or 3-4.
Okay, so maybe it looked like more of a true 3-4 kind of thing or something, or
a little bit of a hybrid.
Okay,
kind of like a 4-3 over or something like that.
Okay.
Hollywood
3-4 over, excuse me.
Sorry, Hollywood OC wants to know if food prices will be raised in the Coliseum this year because of the renovations.
Oh, good question.
I would assume so.
I'm guessing yes, but we've also heard. I mean, I talked to some people at the live show yesterday. Longtime season ticket holders, they were getting calls for to upgrade to club seats. I think all the big suites are sold, or all but one. But there's club seats that are kind of expensive too, and he said it was going to cost about $4,000 a seat to move into the club seats. But I've heard multiple people be approached by that, so maybe the club seats haven't sold as well. Curious to see what they do. My guess would be they're going to increase some of the prices there because, it's not like they've decreased prices anywhere else.
I went to a Rams game and an alcoholic beverage was like $22, so it's not like they're cheap to begin with.
The Rams were pretty, like the beers, there'd be like $17 beers and stuff. You're like
everyone,
Miller Lite kind of thing.
Everyone needs to go to Mercedes-Benz Stadium pricing in Atlanta. It's terrific.
So they have good pricing there.
Oh, it's great. Even their like higher end items is like really good food for $10 instead of $18.
Maybe it's a Georgia thing. The Masters, the one time I went there, everything's cheap. You get like $1.50 pimento and cheese sandwiches. Like, it's pretty good.
Rapid fire, people.
Sorry.
Rapid fire.
All right, go ahead.
There's Ryan's food.
True.
Not an analogy,
SNS Production says, which first 4 games are harder this year or next year for USC?
Next year, just because you have Alabama at the front of it.
I would say, Alabama trumps that. Like, first
I don't even
4
know
games.
what the other 3 are, but Stanford's obviously one of them, but the other 2 I don't know.
It's
and
probably
I would
like
just say Alabama.
Yeah. I would go next year. If you go to front 6, then the at Washington at Notre Dame might tip the scales
definitely
this year. But next year, just Alabama itself is like, yeah.
Hollywood OC wants clarification on whether or not we can interview players. We can't in June. We can in July after PRPs.
Yes. So very soon.
Yes. Going through the questions, making sure I'm not missing anyone. D. Rev
Give her a break,
Lee
YouTubers.
says, do y'all believe what Zach Smith said about Urban and USC?
Nope. I don't
No.
believe anything that man says.
Yeah, I'm not saying that Urban Meyer's not going to end up at USC someday. I think there's potential there, but I'm not thinking that because of something that guy said.
That Zach Smith has a connection in the mail
Yeah,
services or whatever. Get out of here.
that makes no sense.
Jeff Torres says, does this offense help or hurt guys trying to get into the NFL?
This offense, I don't think it affects. It's the same thing. You're seeing guys like Patrick Mahomes. You're seeing, there's always wide receivers from Texas Tech and those guys that have been put into the NFL. And so I think I think it maybe hurts a little bit the running backs. The running backs is harder to showcase your skill set because sometimes the offense will create a giant hole for you, but you still can show your skill set in any offense.
Yeah, I don't think it hurts you. Kyler Murray. That's all you need to know. Like number 1 pick. Like that dude can be the number 1 pick first. Like
True,
under
5'10".
yeah, 5'10" quarterback. It's not a system if you're picking him to be a number 1 overall pick. So I don't think it's going to hurt as much. Maybe maybe like some with the running backs, but overall. Like JT Daniels not going to be hurt because he was running this as opposed to whatever gumbo thing they did last year.
Yeah, especially nowadays. In the past, that might have been the case. Where, he's a system quarterback type of thing. Now I think you can still showcase your
like
skills.
Kingsbury, Graham Harrell. Like they looked at them as system quarterbacks when they were coming out. Like they didn't look at Kyler Murray as a system quarterback.
David Gold wants to know, is Chris Steele eligible?
We do not know that yet.
Yeah, as of now, no. But I think he still has a really good chance to be once we figure out the waiver stuff.
Eric Dunn wants to know, any chance you see Kyle Ford making an impact this year? He has a college body already.
He does. The question is just going to be with the knee and how quickly he's back and can be full participant. He is doing stuff during the PRPs and stuff, which is a great sign. He, Max Williams, both are active. Ethan Ray, on the other hand, not doing anything right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I talked to him last, he said that his knee feels great. It's just working up that quad strength again and just trying to get used to doing activities like that because he got cleared like a month ago. So, yeah. Jasper Smith says, will there be a tunnel vision show throughout the rest of the summer? Interesting that you mentioned the schedule because it's kind of changing.
Yeah, so next week, no, we're not going to do one. I'll be coming back from the opening in Dallas covering all the recruiting stuff. But we'll put a bunch of stuff up on USCfootball.com. Just always check that. July 10th, 2 weeks from now, we have a very special guest lined up. Should be very interesting, especially if you like strength and conditioning stuff.
Ryan.
I'm not saying who. But
I will not be here for that one. And then I won't be here for the next 2 weeks because it doesn't sound like we're doing one the next couple weeks because of international travels.
Yeah, so there'll be some international travels. But we also have someone lined up for later in July, so we're going to work on that as well. Some that has to do with throwing the football around or whatever. I don't know. That's not too, But yeah, we have some good guests lined up. But probably for the next few weeks, we'll have a good one in 2 weeks, and then we might have a couple weeks off again, and then we'll be back.
Yeah, and then we'll get into the regular season schedule, which is pretty crazy.
Then we'll do two. You'll be doing this multiple days a week. So
okay, good.
Yeah, just so Keely and Shaka know. We'll keep trying to get different guests and stuff, and but we get a lot of people live. A lot of people watch it on the replay and stuff. So we do appreciate you guys all, especially all the live stuff. The live interaction's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Rondale on Facebook says, does Jack Sears have a legit chance to win the job, or is it JT Daniels to lose?
We still think that JT Daniels has looked the best, and therefore it's hard to be knocked out of being the starter. But there's still an opening. They haven't named anyone, so you can't say that Jack Sears or Matt Fink doesn't have that opportunity.
Yeah, don't speak for me. No, you can speak for me.
You've said it before, so I'm repeating what you said.
But I forget what I say. I change my mind. I don't know.
That is actually true.
But I agree.
Listen to anything he says.
If I forget a lot of stuff.
Ryan, Warren Childs really wants to know.
Yes.
Really wants to know.
How was your Price of Right experience, and how lame was your showcase at the end of the show?
Oh, my Price is Right experience was amazing. Like one of the coolest days of my life. Getting married and stuff. Seriously, playing golf with Jay Golson was up there. But Price is Right was so. I've watched that show since I was a little kid, and to get on there and to get on fire, I was just in a zone and I won everything. But yes, my showcase was pretty lame, and I can't help but when I watch a show like The Price is Right, and you watch showcases, man, that showcase is so much better than mine. I won everything in my I won everything I could. The only thing I could have done better is I got the dollar on the wheel, and I got the $10,000 bonus instead of the $25,000. I needed one more if I got the dollar instead of 5 cents. So I won everything I could. But what I had was kind of lame compared to what other people had. But it was so much fun. I would do it again in a heartbeat. It's been 10 years. That was 10 years ago, which is crazy. But you can't win for 10 years, and so now I can go back. But I want to do a group. I want to have a group.
Team outing. What?
Yeah, team outing. Because the people I was with, half the people I didn't know was a group of friends for a friend's birthday. They were they had the most fun. They're this is the most fun they ever had in my life. I want to go and I want to see someone else. If we go and Shotgun goes wins, I want to go crazy and root for him and stuff. So they were going bananas for me. To grab that wheel and spin it and stuff, from watching it when I was a little kid, it was amazing. It was really fun.
You can watch it on YouTube. Ryan made us watch it at the Utah trip.
Did I make you watch it? Oh, crap.
Ryan is
Oop, I just knocked the camera. Sorry about that.
Jasper Smith says, any insight into if USC is scheduling any Power 5 teams in the near and distant future?
I haven't heard much on the scheduling right now. I think it's. I don't think there's going to be much finalized right now with the potential of the turnover of the athletic director.
Yeah.
Or not the athletic department, not the athletic director. Someone else had a question about whether or not the president would fire Swan on Monday when she gets hired, which is what brought that up to my mind.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't think it's going to happen that soon.
That would be crazy, but I mean, who knows? We don't know what's happening. But there was an article, I think it was in the Athletic, where they interviewed Steve Lopes, who handles a lot of scheduling. And from the sounds of it, from what they were saying, if we talked about this back then, if USC wants to have 7 home games a year, it means you can't schedule cool home and homes anymore. So they can't do a home and home with Texas. You have to basically every 4th year do a fun out of conference game on a neutral site, like they're going to do against Alabama in 2020, and then they're going to do someone else in 2024. But it won't let them do any more home and homes because of the Notre Dame thing if they want 7 home games. So
and
you're
because
basically
of the Pac-12 schedule too.
Yeah, the Pac-12 schedule. So basically, with the Pac-12 schedule and Notre Dame, you're going to have 5 home games, 5 away games every year because you either have 4 and 5 in conference, 4 home, 5 away, or 5 home, 4 away. But the Notre Dame fills in that other one, so it's 5 and 5. That leaves 2 left. If you want them to both be home games, there's no way you can ever schedule a home and home with anyone because you can't put another away game in there. So that's what he at least told The Athletic. If that's going to be the case going forward, then you won't have any more cool going to Austin and road trips like that.
And also the possibility of playing an FCS team. Jared asked that if they will play an FCS team. I sure as hell hope not.
In that article, they left that open.
I know.
Which it caused a lot of controversy. But watch the show from like a month ago. We talked about that a lot.
That's also true.
We have a question from James on Facebook. He says, do you see any change in Clay Helton?
I think he's changed stuff. I mean, I don't know, but he's changed some of the philosophy, some of the things that he kind of held near and dear. He's done differently, So he's definitely made changes. I don't know if it's hard to change as a person, but I think he's made some significant changes.
What philosophies did you see different? I think he's emphasized things. And that I think he's done a good job of looking at what USC did wrong and what they did poorly last year, and has emphasized correcting those type of things, getting rid of family friends.
So that's a change.
Family friends.
That's a philosophy change.
That's a philosophy change. That's a
hire the family friends and fire them. Like getting rid of a Neil Callaway was a big deal.
That's an I'm on the hot seat. Change.
No, but I think is it forced? But you could still say I'm going down with the ship. Like I'm staying with Neil Callaway and. Then you're probably not going to win a lot of games. I think that's part of the reason why you have a better chance to win this year.
If you listen to what John Baxter said, the podcast that was put up this morning from the event last night, he said that the one thing about Clay Helton is that he's the same person throughout the entirety. He did not change.
He said if he's 5-7 or 12-0, and I was like, well, that hasn't been 12-0, so it's hard to say, But
sure.
Maybe he's making a prediction of the season.
Maybe.
Never know. Sean on Facebook says, assuming Helton remains the coach in 2020, in your opinions, will the new offense move the ball against Alabama next year, assuming the defense stays similar to this year?
Whoa.
Yeah.
A lot of assumptions. No, I think they'll do a lot better than what you saw a couple of years ago. I think this offense. I mean, we've seen these kind of offenses do well against Alabama,
Clemson, Oklahoma.
Really good defenses, and still have the ball moved on by talented teams that are running this kind of scheme.
Does take talent, though.
Yes. Jared Cruz on YouTube says, thoughts about the California bill that would ban the teams from playing in the postseason?
I would be shocked if that happens. But also at the same point, if California says, yeah, you can pay them, and the colleges say we're going to, then that's going to put you in, against the NCAA. So then you're going to have a court battle or something. One side is going to have to give on that.
Yeah.
The California schools can't be like, all right, well, we're paying the kids. And the NCAA just goes, okay, that's fine for you guys. That's not going to happen. One side's going to have to give one way or the other.
I think it's an idle threat from the NCAA, and they're just trying to buy some time. It's funny. When you're rooting for – you got the NCAA over here, and you have California politicians over here. Like, usually they're the bad guy in almost any situation, increasing gas taxes or whatever. But NCAA is always a bad guy. You're rooting for like California politicians in this one. Like, yeah, go ahead, pass this bill. So it went through the Senate. Everyone thinks it's going to pass, but it wouldn't go through until 2023 anyway. So the NCAA has some time, and I think if California passed it, Alabama would pass. Like, you'd see all these other states start passing things like that too, putting more pressure on the NCAA. Just like I said, you want to put pressure on the Pac-12. This is a great way to put pressure on the NCAA. So I think it's a really good thing. I don't think they could ever ban the California schools. If you look at who has the most national championships of any school, Stanford. Who has second most, UCLA. Who has third most, USC. So you're going to ban the three most winning teams in the NCAA because of this bill? This doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, but who provides more money to the NCAA? The Southeast.
True, but the Southeast would follow suit. Like, they would not.
I know, but the NCAA would much quicker if the Southeast was proposing this bill versus California. They'd be just like, all right, well these California schools are out versus, well, the Southeast is doing it. They bring us all the money in from the tournaments and stuff. We have to cater to them.
Yeah, they want to keep the status quo. They want to keep this amateurism thing going as long as possible.
They want to go back 20 years.
It's crumbling. This is starting to crumble, and things like this California bill, is just it's pushing along the eroding process even faster. So it's good. Mm-hmm. It's a good thing.
And not all California politicians are bad. They're trying to propose a bill to push back the last call and how late bars can stay open.
For the most part, man, they tax the crap out of us.
Jordan on Facebook says, how long before USC starts winning Heisman's and national titles again?
This year. Because I predicted that Stephen Carr would be a finalist 2 years ago.
Yep.
I think we'll have a much better idea after the first 6 games of the season. It's either going to be, they're back on the road to prominence, or they're going to make a change. And if they make a change, it depends who they hire. You get a guy like Urban Meyer, like that, you'd say you can start looking at that stuff right away. If they make a really strange kind of hire again, then it's probably going to take a few more years to get over that too.
HR picking stuff on YouTube. I just lost it. Hold on, give me a second.
It's all right. HR picking stuff. I love that.
He asked a couple questions, like how many fans do you predict Fresno will bring in? That's a Fresno question for you, Ryan.
I heard between 15 and 20 was the estimated, what they thought they could bring down. It's a 12-win team last year. They won the Mountain West. They do. If they feel good about their team, they travel well, and they have a really good environment in Bulldog Stadium in Fresno. So they're pretty. To go from 1-11 to 10 wins to 12 wins, that's a pretty ridiculous turnaround for Jeff Tedford. So I know they lose a lot, but he's a really good coach, so you can't overlook that. But I think there'll be a whole bunch of Bulldog fans there.
Found it. HR Picking Stuff wants to know from Shotgun, what is your impression of the wider run splits in the spread offense?
That it creates more running lanes and also can leave you susceptible to teams that really attack with defensive tackles. So we'll see how they kind of balance that and how the offensive linemen have they talked about how they've gotten used to it. They got to deal with it in the spring, and they've gotten more used to it, is what they were saying at the end of the spring.
We actually have a caller, if we want to go to that.
Oh, wow. Should we end on the caller? Because
we have a lot of questions, but sure.
Oh, we do? Okay.
Let's go to the caller.
If you weren't so bad at rapid fire.
From Tennessee. Hello, you're on the line.
Hey, Keely, it's your favorite caller, Cattleman in Tennessee.
It's true.
Hey, you ready to elope and meet me in Amarillo? I'll buy you a chicken fried steak at the truck stop.
Cattleman.
I don't even know half of the words he just said.
He's bringing a lot of game.
She doesn't know the word elope to begin with.
Oh, I did not. Okay.
Hey,
wow. You made an impression, Cattleman.
Guy's got a wacky your Bill King collar there, Ryan. Got a quick Pac-12 expansion question for you. You might have heard this one before. What about UNLV and San Diego State? Makes more sense than you think. San Diego's 3.5 million people.
Yeah, I think so. If you're looking at markets, I think the Pac-12 feels like they have those markets. When you they love the pairs. It's not necessarily a pair. The academics certainly aren't going to be there for either one of those schools. A huge issue. So I think if the Pac-12 feels they own San Diego already, it's not really worth bringing in San Diego State. Now, if USC and UCLA were to leave, or Arizona State were going to leave, you might need to do something like that. But I think to add to the 12 with a San Diego State or a UNLV, I just don't think that would ever fly.
Yeah, I don't think it's a big enough draw for them. Vegas is, still has plenty of LA connections there, so I don't think it's that they want to get into the market that bad to go and get UNLV, just because they're not upper tier or anything. The Mountain West is a pretty small conference, so if you did do that, you could pick apart whoever you kind of wanted to. So your choices there are not great, though, I don't think, as far as pulling in talented programs in multiple sports. It's just not the case. Like UNLV's been good in basketball before. San Diego State's been good in basketball and a little bit in football. But, I mean, San Diego State's probably the biggest draw there because they're pretty consistent across their sports. But I just don't think that the draw is big enough to pull those two schools.
Those are almost like suburbs of LA anyway. So, just like – no, I mean, they're like in the mind of if you're looking at, TV eyeballs, like you can get a lot of SC, UCLA people in those markets. So, yeah. I mean, interesting idea, but I just don't think the Pac-12 is going something like that. It's just that the academic side, research institutions, all that stuff, I think would not fly.
Yep, already. Thanks, Cattleman, for the call.
And the proposal.
And, I'm not thanking you for that. Ryan, where do you want to go with this? We can either end it now, or we can do some more rapid fire.
Do you want me to do the rapid fire? Let's just do my...
Hold on. Okay, before we do, we had a touching moment happen in the Facebook comments. There's friends talking back and forth. One of them told them the first USC game's on me. I'm getting you tickets and we're going. So it's a nice little moment.
Really?
Yeah.
Who did that?
I think Jaime did. And he gave it to David. And David said, "You just made me cry inside, brother." So
Jaime and David. Look, we're making connections here.
Okay.
Great job, guys.
The Trojan family.
Yeah, that's very cool. Do a couple rapid fire.
Now on to rapid fire.
I got to
Johnny,
eat something, man.
do we still recruit in the state of Florida? Not right now because USC doesn't have the staff that has previous connections there. But they're recruiting more in Texas now.
Yes, because of the staff. But you got to win more games, too.
Yeah. Brian, what's the linebacker crew look like? Deep, especially in the middle linebackers. There's lots of those guys.
How many linebackers are you going to put on the field? You might have way too many. I don't know.
We ran through some of these. Will there be? We did that one.
John Lab wants to know the details of PRPs, like who actually organizes that, what they do, and who runs it.
So in the past, it was just more like fun, go out and compete type of things, and hey, we're going to run some of the plays we know. But then
who's the quarterback? Who's the defensive captain? And they would like kind of get the guys together and do it.
Now it's more, there was in the past couple of years there was a script. Hey, we're running through these plays that we want you to run. Now it's just. John Baxter said there were 18 plays in the playbook, the offense playbook. I think is what he said yesterday. So they're running through the things that they know. It's not like there's somebody with a big notepad or something with all the plays on it now.
But yeah, it used to be a lot more competition, a lot of one-on-ones and stuff, and they've got away from that. There's been some injuries and things that people do, but that's what I liked the most about the summer workouts back in the day. But they don't do that anymore.
Jasper, if USC was dominating the Pac-12 like during the PC era, would you want them to leave the conference? Ryan wants to leave the conference.
Even more so, yes. Because you're still getting paid. You're still getting paid a lot.
Yeah, you would have more leverage then. So
yeah, it'd be better if that was the case.
HR picking stuff. Which Pac-12 team takes the biggest step backwards in 2019?
Ooh, okay. So
Washington State.
There's potential there because they won 11 games.
And Gardner Minshew's gone. I don't know about the quarterback, but last year you didn't know about the quarterback, and Gardner Minshew came in was great.
Yeah,
so.
If you underestimate them, I mean, Stanford's a candidate for that. Would they win like 9 games last year? But I still think they're going to be in that kind of range.
Quarterback.
KJ Costello is legit, but they lose a lot of production outside. You want to look at Arizona State, finishing second in the South, 7-5.
Lose their quarterback.
Losing Manny Wilkins, losing N'Keal Harry. But you got some studs on, Crosswell, I think, is that the safety? And then Merlin Robertson, I think it was Pac-12 Freshman of the Year, Defensive Freshman of the Year or something. They got some younger pieces. I like the staff. They could potentially take a step back. It won't be Oregon State or Colorado, I'll tell you that.
UCLA? Big step back from
really
3-9?
hard for that. Yeah, they're probably not them either.
Oh, boy.
Jared Cruz, will the Coliseum ever host a bowl game in the future? No. But the new stadium in L.A. has that potential.
Yeah. That's where one will be, but the Coliseum, no.
And the new stadium in Vegas. Both those should be in the mix for playoff games and stuff. Because they're going to want to be in Vegas or L.A. much more than where's Santa Cruz? Where's the San Jose?
Oh,
Santa Clara.
Santa Clara, yeah. Santa something.
Yeah, that's the dump up there.
Just because there's just nothing there in that
terrible.
part of the town.
Oh, I hate that.
It's an hour away from San Francisco. And the last question I have on here was, will there be a first-team All-American on this team this year from HR Picking Stuff?
It's tough. I don't think so.
If I was guessing for one, I would go with Jay Tufele. That'd be my one guess.
Yeah.
If I was guessing,
He'd
who
have to
would
get
be-
8-9 sacks and a bunch of tackles for loss or something.
I'm not saying that's not going to happen.
No.
John wants to know, which of the freshmen do you see having the best season?
Drake Jackson.
Yeah, I think it would be Drake. I mean, he's going to be a household name, I think.
Outside chances is one of the young receivers. If Kyle Ford gets healthy, if Drake London has a big year, I've heard people on the basketball side that said, we don't know if Drake's going to make it to us because we think he might blow up as a freshman. So
Wow.
we'll see if that actually happens, though.
Bob wants to know, does eliminating 15,000 seats have an effect on the noise level?
We don't know that because now there's a building in the stadium. No one's ever done that before, so how's that going to impact things?
And how does the way the glass is shaped, does it reverberate off? Because some places, like say Iowa, the sound reverberates off the glass. It was designed that way. Same thing in Seattle, I think, with their 12th man and everything.
Box, yeah.
Is that it was designed so the sound would stay in the stadium and reverberate back and forth, rather than based on. Instead of doing the design based on look, you do it on the sound waves.
I'm sure USC thought of that and really planned. And
What was that?
they always think ahead and do things that are,
The sarcasm is strong in this one.
And one more I saw from Jared. Should USC do a throwback night this season, and what uniform would you want to see? That'd be pretty
fun.
interesting.
probably the ones with like the stripes on they're kind of ugly. Like when I was going to school, like before, they basically threw back to the
curve,
like the curved ones. It would have like just the regular kind of stripe on it, like probably what they would go back to if they did anything,
I would say whichever one is the most different from
Yeah.
the current uniforms, just so you can see it's so different as a throwback. And I know people, oh my God, they shouldn't change the uniforms. The uniforms continually slightly change.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
And they should put
Alrighty.
the names on the back of the jerseys.
Let's not go that far.
Ryan?
Let's not go that far.
Ryan's gonna
That's
cause
what
a
Keely
riot.
said. I didn't think that. That's
Ryan,
what Keely thought.
no.
Tweet her at Keely is my name.
No, troublemaker, Ryan Abraham. Alrighty, any final questions you want to slip in there? Are we, boss man?
I think
calling
we're
it?
good.
We're good.
Yeah, let's call it.
Alrighty, thank you guys so much for watching today. As we said, no television next week. We'll be back July 10th with a special guest, so make sure you tune into that. Have a happy and safe 4th of July, and we'll see you guys soon. That's Ryan. That's Shotgun. I'm Keely. We'll see you in a little bit.
See ya.
Tweet us your firework photos and videos.
Sure.
Awesome.
Yeah, sounds good. Bye.
The Tommy helmet, that would be an interesting throwback. We dominated this show.
I mean, that still goes.
You didn't even look at the document that I had.